So yeah, how's everybody doing after the lunch? Hope it was tasty and delicious. Um, yeah, for the next hour and a half, we have a number of really exciting things to talk about. Those are exciting, but not the most the nicest thing in science. So we're going to talk about predatory open access journals because I personally I hate this that they exist in research. So if we try to flip it to a more constructive connotation, let's talk about publishing hygiene. So how can we keep away from these predatory open access journals? Then we'll talk about retracted research outputs, how they happen, how to deal with them. Should you be fearing that your paper can be once retracted? So we'll talk about that. And then we will talk about more constructive things like data citation index. Again, because we will be a bit improvising depending on your interest and your questions. Maybe we'll finish a bit earlier. Maybe there'll be a lot of questions. Maybe I will just add this topic that we just touched in the beginning of the morning session, which is researcher profiles. I just added a few slides to the slide deck about that. And if we have some time, we'll also be able to talk about that. But let's start with predatory open access journals. So who they are, what they are, and why it is a very good idea not to deal with them. So before I even jump to their definition, let's talk about why this is even becoming a problem. So this graph that you see is really our main concern in our value proposition to a lot of the users about why you should be selective with the journals that are indexed in the database. Sometimes we talk to the users that say, hey, okay, your Web of Science only indexes like 20-something thousand journals, but there are over 100,000 journals in the world. I want to see them all. And we say, well, we appreciate that wish, but are you ready to actually dig into these tons of journals that are not worthwhile, that where you can trust if you can reproduce the data that's published there, or you might not even be able to trust to the citation metrics that are published in these data. And this is approximately the graph between 1900 and 2019 that shows our evaluation of the reliable scholarly journals and how many predatory journals appears every year. So let's talk about where exactly all this comes from and why is this dangerous. So predatory journals are a type of the open access journals. And before we talk about what was their difference, let's just very quickly remind ourselves about what the difference is between open access journals and subscription-based journals. So subscription-based is basically the model that was here almost forever, since the beginning of the term scholarly journals. So subscription journals are basically, it's free of charge to publish there, and they won't charge you a penny for publishing a paper there. More than that, sometimes they even have, in the majority of cases, they even have like a declaration published somewhere on their website that will exclude double payments. So it's really impossible to take money both from the author and from the subscriber, unless, of course, there's one case where this is a hybrid open access journal, and like we just been discussing a few hours ago, if the paper that you submitted is so good that they can help a few selected papers to become open access, that's exactly what hybrid open access model is about. Then, of course, yes, they can suggest to the authors of the best articles on the volume to maybe fund their open access publication, their article processing charge. But again, that's not, if you get this proposal, you don't have to agree to that. If you don't have the money, or you don't want to pay them for making your article open access, feel free to reject the offer, and your article will still be published in that journal. It's just going to be subscription based, like the whole journal, which is totally fine. Again, this model is called hybrid open access. So yeah, the only problem with the subscription model, as specifically if we take a look at that at a larger scale, is that the problem of a paywall. That didn't seem like to be a problem in the middle of the 20th century when there was just a number of publishers from which universities could subscribe to specific journals, but it became a bit of a problem closer to the end of the 20th century, where when the publishers began to merge with each other, when they became charging more for the primary collections, and it turned out that it's a bit funny story that's happening. So research, basically, what you all are doing, research is normally state-funded endeavor where you produce new knowledge and you publish this new knowledge, and then some guys just come to the library saying, hey, now pay us once again for access into this knowledge. That doesn't seem really good. So of course they do have to earn their money, I mean the publishers, but when the people started exchanging information about the costs of the subscriptions, that really became an issue. And that's how basically the open access movement occurred. So what is the open access about? Again, the payment for the publication is done by the author, and that means the publication is free of charge, free to access to anybody in the scholarly society and even beyond the scholarly society. But that article processing charge can be quite painful in certain cases. So yeah, the problem number one is how you find the money to fund it, and we've just discussed that normally it's the scientific funders, funding organizations that can block a part of of their grants specifically for paying of the article processing charges in case, of course, they want the results to be published in the open access journal. In case that doesn't happen, well, we always encourage the universities to work out these workflows that would allow to support the researchers whose articles have been accepted to prestigious open access journals to maybe fund these article processing charges for their own researchers. I think that's a really great approach. And there's a problem number two. If the author is paying for the for getting the paper published, not the subscriber, then there becomes a conflict of interest. Then certain publishers might be really tempted to publish more because there are more authors wants to bring them money to actually publish the record, and they might be willing to sacrifice the quality of the records just because it's not the end user who is basically paying for the subscription. And that's how all the predatory open access occurred. So it's I can't tell you when exactly did the first predatory open access publisher was created, but yeah, obviously they don't do a lot of good for the researcher, for the research and for the researchers, just because they, first of all, they parasite on the whole scientific system. They withdraw the money from it, which can be otherwise used in a bit different directions, and yeah, they just completely confuse the stimulus for the researchers. It turns out that these predatory open access publishers, they thrive, if I can use this word better in developing economies. Normally, it's where the management create certain KPIs for the researchers that are linked to the number of documents published in the top journals. So you probably won't expect this to happen at Harvard University or in Tokyo University or in Toronto. But in developing countries, this happens a lot. I've been working with a number of developing countries in the world, and I see it happening a lot. where there is a goal for publishing more documents in databases like Web of Science, that is exactly where a lot of researchers who don't have their own like motivation to be publishing in the best journals of the world, they might fall victims to the predatory open access publishers. And sometimes I get this confusion from the users that they think that any open access publisher is a predatory one, and that's also not true, because a lot of them still are legitimate. A lot of the publishers in first and second quartile, according to the Journal Impact Factor, they are still very good. They don't they don't have anything in common with the predatory ones, except for they follow the same open access paradigm. So what is the difference between them? And the difference is the peer review process. So when you submit your document to a publisher, if it's accepted by the editorial board, they normally find another researcher who is working in the same subject area, and without your name on the record, they just send it to him to proofread it and to verify how was the experiment conducted, how was the statistical analysis conducted, are the outcomes, do they make sense, etc. And just like the peer reviewer doesn't know whose paper he's reviewing, if he sends you a certain through the publisher, of course, if he sends you his or her suggestions to rework, for example, the article, then of course you also don't know who has been reviewing your work. This is called double-blind peer review. Sometimes it's not exactly double-blind, because in certain narrow subject areas you might even know who is reviewing your work, but yeah, generally it's really double-blind, and it's and the funny thing is that peer reviewers, that they don't get paid for the for their job. So because of this process, it's a cornerstone of making our science what it is right now. So it still keeps producing quality, reproducible results. And with legitimate open access publishers, if we take a closer look at them, their target audience is the readership. So whoever is going to read the documents. And that's why there's no point in fooling them by providing them low quality articles that haven't, for example, been peer reviewed. And they normally care about their reputation. So specifically, if they are in the first or in the second quartile, they care about their name. These are the guys who don't really want to be even remotely associated with predatory open access publishing. Still, the problem with these guys is that they're quite pricey. So I don't know. I've seen the article processing charge is equaling $3,000 or $4,000. Maybe you've seen even higher article processing charges. Once again, that's normally not something that I have in my pocket to be able to pay right away for the for the article processing charge. Now, what do predatory open access publishers do? They either completely remove all the peer review process from their workflows, or they just simplify it down to smallest formalities. Like I've seen one predatory open access publisher that suggested to submit the articles together with the reviews. So you just send them the manuscript and you send them the reviews together with it, which looked crazy, but it was still made public. So if there's no peer review, then obviously the quality of the materials that they publish by default goes much lower, and theoretically it can mean that they will write any rubbish without even peer reviewing it. I don't know if you heard this anecdote that one of the researchers, and just for the sake of language, I won't be posting any screenshots from that, but one of the researchers, he gets so tired of one of the predatory open access publishers spamming him with the suggestions to get published in their journal, that he started sending them emails, get him out of their mailing list. And when they didn't react, he just sent them a paper where every word was literally, get me off your mailing list together with some of the graphs that were exactly the same, like wording, or some diagrams, some tables, which were all about the same. Get me off your mailing list. With some obscene language there. The funny thing is that this article actually got accepted by that publisher. So they said, "Oh yeah, that article shows very interesting. It's very interesting results." So yeah, if you want it, you can Google it. Get me off your mailing list, and you'll find this. Actually, we all even have one. If we search for cited reference searches on Web of Science, we're going to find one of the references to this paper. So it was published in a reputable journal. So that was a proper made research specifically on predatory open access publishers. And it was referring this particular predatory paper. So yeah, this also sometimes happens. But of course, the paper itself never appeared on Web of Science, and the publisher as well. So yeah, they have one benefit, to be frank, compared with the legitimate open access publishers, is that their article processing charges are quite lower. So if you find, if you work with a specific open access publisher and you all of a sudden you find that their charges are affordable, that's the first thing that you have to think about. So normally the business model sometimes works like this. University management starts paying some extra extra payments to the researchers for getting their papers published in certain journals. And they just realized that, okay, if I get let's say $2,000 for getting my paper published, and this open access publisher just charges $500 for publication, then I get a paper published and I still get $1,500 as a revenue. So that's a good business model, you can think to yourself. But yeah, it turns out that it's a huge mark on your reputation just by dealing with these predatory open access publishers. Not to say that it might really damage maybe your relationship with the university. And yeah, they do a lot of spam mailing. So they even I receive a lot of yeah, I think you receive much more than I do, but even I receive a lot of emails with suggestions to publish in this journal or in certain predatory conferences. I would say that you can even tell by the language of this mailing either this is a spam, excuse me, either this is a predatory open access publisher or this is a legitimate one, because a legitimate publisher mailing is normally, the goal is to raise awareness. So if they are trying to run an email campaign to the authors, there's a few distinct messages there. Number one is we exist. Number two is we're a good journal in this subject area. Number three is if you care to publish with us, please submit us your papers. And it's supposed to happen that yes, we do peer review the articles. However, the spam mailing from the predatory open access publishers, it's all about fake metrics that they have, like general impact factor. It's about how they would like to publish your work in a specific set of days, like almost that they guarantee that it's going to be indexed by Web of Science, Scopus, or other databases, etc. So yeah, you can find a lot of that in spam mailing from these guys. The first attempt to really somehow systematize the knowledge about predatory open access publishers, and this is already history. It's unfortunately this list is already closed, but I think it was a really good initiative. So this gentleman, Jeffrey Beal, he was associate professor of library science in University of Colorado, Denver. He once got tired from getting all these spam mailings from the predatory publishers, and he started creating his own list of predatory publishers. Unfortunately, in certain cases, he did it too hard, I would say. So sometimes on his list, you would be able to find absolutely legitimate publishers. So I give you an example. Well, I heard this from the third party that once he had certain concerns about the publisher. He gave a call to their office, and the lady answered in Chinese. So he immediately decided that, okay, this is probably a predatory publisher. Well, not exactly how you would test them, but yeah, he was not absolutely 100% correct in his judgments. So yeah, he started to get criticized very often, first of all, by the legitimate publishers, but more importantly by these guys who might be in the gray area, where they don't have enough reputation to say that, hey, how come you can say that about us? And maybe not really well-known publishers. So they started criticizing him. And some predatory publishers also started to criticize him just because they wanted some additional hype. And sooner or later, his management already turned to him saying, hey, you're creating certain problems, like reputational problems for our university. So he had to close this list. Fortunately, the list still exists. He still lists the publishers themselves there, the standalone journals. He also speaks about the concept of a vanity press, which I don't think if it's really applicable to you, but that's normally like so you can basically, with the publishers like that, you can sometimes publish a book which will be edited in very limited number of copies, and they will be extremely expensive, so nobody would probably buy them. So it's just really to report on that this book, for example, has been published. That's my understanding of how it happens. And yeah, some of the like journal evaluation tools, some of the practices about this this process, he also used to publish there. He's still alive, he's still working. He just had to close this this list, but yeah, a lot of what he was doing was very important. Immediately after that, there was created another blacklist, so-called, if I'm not mistaken, it was named Cabal. I don't follow it too much, but really I don't know if we really should be following these blacklists, as long as we have Web of Science and we're trying to do a great job in filtering out this predatory publishers away. I think more or less we're fine, but I'll be telling you some of the procedures that we have to make sure that even the existing journals, they don't fall into this, excuse me, the existing journals that are indexed on Web of Science, they don't fall into this predatory predatory way. If you're interested, there's another resource which I would recommend you to read sometimes. Scholarly Kitchen is, it's not really a blog about open access. It's not definitely a blog about predatory open access. It's just really a collection, a blog platform about what's going on in the academic publishing. So a lot of our experts from Clarivate that are responsible for selecting the journals, they read it. Some of them even write their own columns there. So, but yeah, every now and then they have certain blog posts, quite interesting ones about predatory open access publishing. So what's going on there? And yeah, the link is right here, and because we'll probably be sharing the slides of the presentation, you'll be able to access it. The next concept, which is like a subtype of predatory open access, is the hijacked journals. And that's basically when predators, they steal the identity of the real legitimate journals. So imagine a situation where you found a journal on Web of Science. You didn't read it a lot, but you see that it seems to be reputable. It seems to be, it seems to work in your subject area, and it seems to have a high journal impact factor. So what's the next thing you do? You probably visit their website. And that's at least the thing that I find on Google a lot recently. The first link would be sponsored, and it might, in certain cases, lead you to actually to the fake website. So these are the two examples of the same journal. Does anybody remember what Yokul 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago already happened? There was a volcano in Iceland with almost unpronounceable Eyjafjallajökull. So Yakut is exactly means glacier, and so this is the journal all dedicated to the topic of glaciers, probably based somewhere in Iceland. So one of these pages of the journal is absolutely legitimate. The other one, it belongs to a to a hijacked website. So when you just log into any of them, you can't tell for sure if it's a legitimate website or if you're just dealing with the owners of the hijacked version. So yeah, just for your reference, the left one is real, the right one is fake, but it's really hard for even now. I can just say that the left. The design of the left side is a bit nicer, but what if the owners of hijacked journal finally hire a really good website developer, for example? So yeah, that's also a problem. Is there a way to for sure say what the address, what the real address of the journal is? Well, I would say we do have links to the journal websites, at least at master journal list, sometimes in the journal citation reports. But even that isn't really 100% guarantee, because sometimes it can happen that the journal can miss their hosting payment, and the host might just block it, and that's where the cyber squatters can easily hijack even the legitimate URL of a journal. So yeah, that is a problem. So yeah, please keep in mind what can happen there. The next thing is my favorite one. It's the misleading metrics. Again, a lot of these spammers from the predatory open access journals, they will use this. So they will create certain misleading metrics that our site factor of our journal is 5.8. I don't know what does it mean. I specifically like the site factor logo. It reminds of Thomson Reuters logo, like the former company that we used to belong to, and when we were creating impact factor. So yeah, G factor, general impact factor, scientific journal impact factor, systematic impact factor. Those are just the ones, the logos that I was able to find yesterday. There are much more than that, and obviously you find a lot of that in these spam emails. Sometimes the fake journals would claim that even they will have the proper, the real impact factor much higher than it actually is. They normally don't have any. So yeah, in case any journal like that claims that they have an impact factor of X, just easily check that on journal citation reports. That's the easiest thing, because the only way you can access and you can calculate the journal impact factor, the only source of it is the journal citation report. So that's quite easy to check. And yeah, they will always often boast fake metrics. And yeah, sometimes these websites that promote these metrics, they can charge journals for actually assigning them this metric, which is funny. So yeah, to summarize everything we can know about the credible journals and predatory journals. This is, by the way, this is from New England Journal of Medicine blog, where they just compare incredible journals and the predatory ones. So if you're submitting a paper to a credible journal, probably that will look something like this. There will be a lot of obstacles. There will be a filter by the editorial board. If it passes the editorial filter, then there might be one or two double-blind peer reviewers that might send you a lot of their comments, maybe even suggesting you to completely rewrite your paper just because you've set the experiment incorrectly. That is really disappointing, but that is the way your paper actually becomes better, so that it can finally be published in a reputable journal. When you deal with a predatory open access journal, it all looks like this. We respect your research, whatever it is, so please just bring us your money. Unfortunately, yeah, that's what happens. But yeah, that if you anyhow feel like you treat it like this with a journal, probably chances are you have to double check that journal. And how you can double check that? Yeah, Web of Science and Journal Citation Reports is at your service in this case. So first of all, you can just run a search on a journal on Web of Science. If it exists there, if it's actively indexed, most likely 99.9% that you're safe. You can also check if the journal has an impact factor. If it's in first or second quartile according to journal impact factor, I would say 99.999% that it's not predatory, just because the owners of the journals that have really high impact factors, they care so much about their reputation that they won't even be tempted to switch to the predatory open access publishing model. And let's talk very quickly about switching from legitimate open access to predatory open access publishing, which can sometimes happen. And this happens normally when, not normally, but sometimes the publishers might be tempted when they get finally their legitimate journal accepted into a database like Web of Science. And this is when they might relax and say, okay, now we're in Web of Science, we can publish whatever we want, and people will just bring us their money. And the funny thing is that we very quickly, we find out these publishers. So it's a bit funny that sometimes the predatory open access publishers, they are treated like cancer in science, like they're named like that. And what's funny here is that just like the cancer growth starts growing, absolutely in the same way, the predatory open access journals, when these, the legitimate open access journals, when they switch to the predatory way, they also start growing in terms of number of papers, because when you just completely remove the peer review process and you start publishing any rubbish that gets sent to you, so we often see that the journals that used to publish like 100 documents per year, all of a sudden they start publishing 1,000 documents per year and something like that. So we very quickly notice that, and that's exactly one of the reasons we start reviewing that journal in case it is confirmed that the quality of its materials has significantly went down. That's when we can take a decision to completely remove the journal from the coverage on Web of Science. So that means that we'll probably keep a part of its archive, just because in the previous years there were legitimate papers there, but that means that from certain point there will be no new issues of these journals indexed. And just to remind you very quickly of our journal selection policy. So for Web of Science, and there was this question like how does Web of Science differs from the competition? We really boast and we are proud to have one of the most strict, if not the most strict selection policy in the world. So we have like the initial check of a journal, whether or not it has the formal signs of a scholarly journal, whether it has an ISSN, whether it has a title, a publisher, a URL, and we check their website if they have a presence of a peer review policy. So normally the journal is supposed to have it. Of course, having a peer review policy doesn't mean that they actually do have it. So that's something that we check in subsequent stages. But all of the journals, all of the almost 22,000 journals that are currently indexed by Web of Science, all of them pass through this procedure. And we made sure by either studying their website or by normally by reading their content that they do have the peer review process and they don't basically publish any rubbish that they get for money. And because we were talking about AI and how we use it in Clarivate recently, yes, I've been mentioning this verbally already, but just to let you know that now we also have AI helping us to actually find the potential predatory open access journals. So that is a complex statistical score based on a deep machine learning network. But what it does is, it finds the journals that seem to have high deviations from the norm. And in case something really strange is going on in any journals, that's when the live humans from our selection, from our content department get alerted, and they basically start reviewing this journal with more precision, start reading their content. And if it's confirmed that the journal's quality is getting down very quickly, we can take a decision of excluding the journal from the Web of Science core collection at all. So that's how it happens. let's talk about the retractions then. Let me just very quickly check if we're on time. Yeah. So retractions. What can I tell you about that? Again, it's not the nicest thing that we can meet in the academic world, but it's also a filter, to be frank, that actually makes sure that first of all, we read quality information in these scholarly journals, and number two, that is a part of a reputation management. So what is exactly retraction? It's a mechanism by which if a particular research output is considered to have serious issues, seriously flawed, its results are not trusted. And it's very important to understand that such articles are not deleted from the journals, so they still exist there, but somehow they're like withdrawn from the scientific turnover. So you can still read this paper, you can theoretically try to cite it if you want, but that doesn't have any additional scholarly value as it used to have. Interestingly, who can initiate the process of a retraction? First of all, and the most logical way is if you're a researcher and somehow you found out that you had an issue with the design of your experiment, to the point that you came to completely false outcomes. This is when you probably can reach out to the journal itself with a statement that we did make this mistake, we did review it, and we probably have to request the retraction. Sometimes this might happen by the journals themselves. So when the journal's readers, for example, in the comments section on the journal website, start saying that this is not possible. Look, this sort of experiment, it's not reproducible, and it couldn't happen because of this, and this. Sometimes the journals can conduct this this review themselves and come up with an idea that, okay, we should publish a retraction. In some cases, so I only heard about them. I haven't heard about the story about how this happens and who initiated it. But sometimes this happened by the affiliated institution. So again, probably because of the general public might start questioning specific outputs that were in any research, then probably and the researcher themselves wouldn't want to initiate the retraction. Maybe, yeah. Excuse me, this can be done by the institution itself. And yeah, it's also important to understand that a retraction notice is a separate document that is published in one of the subsequent volumes of the same journal, but it will have the original document as a connected document. So the retraction notice will just announce the reason for the retraction. It is also important to understand that not any mistake qualifies for a retraction. So if you just confuse millimeters and nanometers in your document, which kind of changes the idea of the document, but not that harshly. It was just a typo, so that would be covered by correction. Same goes in case there are grammatical errors that might lead to possible different interpretation, or as I noticed in a few cases, if there are words missing from the document. So, for example, that there was a title field for your document and just two words just disappeared from it, changing the perception of what this document is about, for example. This can also happen. That can be covered with the correction. But if there are serious issues with the experiment design, as I already mentioned, if you are, like, for example, cell biologist, and there was like a contamination of these cells or materials or reagents, and you found this after the publication, and that definitely changed the whole outcomes of the paper, then definitely you also have to request for retraction. If you are a computer scientist and there was a bug in the code, or a data scientist and you found the bug in the code that was processing the data, clearly it also has to be done. Some other cases are listed here. So like a data set on which you rely is flagged as invalid, or if there is an error in statistical analysis, if there are any legal or ethical issues that were uncovered. Again, that might not, you might not have known about this, that this happened, or if sometimes the authors have just maybe hidden it, but it was uncovered by the general public that, yeah, there was actually an ethical problem with this research, or if there was data falsification. So if the researcher really wanted to change the data to look at differently. So yeah, that's also can sometimes happen. So that was those are all reasons for retraction. And this is what a real retraction notice looks like. So once again, I'm sorry for the size of the font, but essentially there are three main parts of this retraction notice. One is a clear explanation of the concerns. So once again, what was the reason for the retraction? What was the reason for the mistake? Number two is if the reputation is important, is to explain what was done to investigate it. Like we care about it. This is what we've done to investigate this problem. And finally, why this is important, why telling to the general public that this shouldn't be treated like the final results. I think this is also a very good idea to explain this to the community. That there is a way to conveniently find all the retracted publications on Web of Science. So if you ever wanted to analyze the whole data set, good news is that it's still quite small. It's just 33,000 papers. So if you want to really touch the retracted papers themselves and understand who wrote them, what subject areas they belong to, well, let's try doing that, because I think that's actually quite an exciting endeavor. So on Web of Science, if you've been using it for maybe only a few days, this might look a bit hard for you. But if you've been using Web of Science for quite a while, then this is maybe something that you know much better than I do. So we do have basic search on Web of Science, just fielded search, when you can run like a topical search or affiliation search or author search. But we also have an advanced search, and it can search almost any field that exists on Web of Science record. And we can even search by document type, and that one has a code of DT equals, DT stands for document type. And if we put DT equals retracted publication and just hit a search button, it's going to return us all these 33,000 of the retracted publications that exist on Web of Science. Generally in the world, in the other databases, there are much more retracted publications. So if you take a look at OpenAlex, for example, or at any other databases, that there's more than that. And because Web of Science does certain content selection, yeah, there's much less retractions with us, but still sometimes sometimes these mistakes happen, and as we'll see with you a bit later, sometimes it's a question of honesty just to submit this retraction request. Now, one of the things that you probably noticed is how much more retractions have happened in the year 2022. Well, for year 2023, we still have quite a limited amount of data. I'm pretty sure that there's more that's going to come. There's still a lot to be uncovered, but the fact that the number of retractions almost doubled in the year 2022, it's alerting, and probably that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation with you. So once again, unfortunately, there's no way we can tell whether or not any of these retractions were initiated by the researchers themselves, or whether they were initiated by the publishers, because those are two different stories. If the retraction was initiated by a researcher themselves, that's a good quality sign that the researcher cares about his or her reputation, and that they want to make sure that their name is basically still associated with good quality research. Well, if it's initiated by the publisher, that's normally a sign that the researcher might did some data falsification, and that might be like really a hole on the reputation. And by the way, that is a very good question. How many retractions can a researcher have before it starts really damaging their reputation? Well, that's really hard question to ask. Unfortunately, there's no benchmark. Sometimes I would say that even without any retractions, a researcher can be noticed in some other scientific misconduct. However, if there's only one retraction and you see that the researcher cares about it, probably I won't say that you shouldn't be working with him. However, if a researcher frequently appears like he has a number of retractions already in their career, that's a very bad sign for them. But I guess it's like making a retraction is like, I don't know, it's like making a mistake in your life, and like, I don't know, would you shake a hand to a person that had some criminal record, for example? Well, if it happened only once, I think depending on the severity of the case, well, I think of course it can be possible in certain cases. So there's a country breakdown for these retractions, and you can see the leading countries currently China. And again, this is now a question of how good or bad is to have a retraction. You would also see, well, I definitely wouldn't encourage anyone to judge persons by the country they belong to. But as you can see, there's still a lot of Japanese, for example, retractions here. Well, I would be inclined to think that I wouldn't suspect any Japanese person, for example, to falsify their research. But on the other hand, I would probably accept that if they found any flaws in their research, it's a part like of national psyche so from feeling of dead to go and to retract that publication. So that's why probably we see a lot of Japanese names there. So I would expect that these guys maybe hide much less scientific misconduct than the others. But again, that's just an assumption, and of course we shouldn't be treating people just based on their country and their passport. So yeah, just you see the number of the number in the rectangle is the number of retracted papers in total on Web of Science, and you can say that Malaysia also exists on this list with 360 retracted publications. When we're talking about subject area breakdown, again, it's not very even across subject areas, and it seems like you're much more likely to publish a paper that can be potentially retracted if you work somewhere in the border between the computer data science and biology. So we see a lot of topics like oncology, like computer science information systems, mathematical computational biology. So I would think that anything that involves genomics, any complex codes that analyze large sets of data and then could create certain outputs based on that analysis, that's exactly where a lot of mistakes can happen, and maybe some additional workflows to ensure the quality of the research are required. A bit more about the journals that mostly publish this retracted, that mostly retract articles, or that have their articles retracted. Now, of course, I won't say that, so this by no means this even closely equals to predatory publishers, but probably if there's a large number of retracted documents on the journal, that either means that they could have probably done a better peer review process for specific articles, or vice versa, that they are so honest that they massively easily retracted a large number of their papers just to be on the safe side. And finally, I also retrieved this data, these 33,000 retracted articles from Web of Science using Web of Science API, and pushed it into another software called VOS Viewer, which can cluster the co-occurring keywords and co-authorships and provide the data in the form of clustering or word cloud like here. So you can also take a look at the the most frequently occurring keywords that happen on the on the Web of Science documents that have been retracted. Now, there's one blog that I would recommend you to read, and that's specifically dedicated to the topic of retractions. So it's maintained by two people who really want to conduct investigations. Like if a retraction happens, they give a lot of context to it, like who initiated it, what was the background, how did it happen, what was the reason for this or that retraction. So if you care about this topic, I would certainly recommend you to read retractionwatch.com. This blog normally gets updated quite frequently. So yeah, and it's specifically dedicated to retraction. So yeah, go ahead and take a look at that. Now, the last thing which we wanted to discuss today is the data citation index. So I'm sorry, we're kind of jumping between the topics. So we've been already talking about the databases that are outside of the Web of Science platform, but are in your subscription. Now, the first three databases that we discussed a while ago, they were like the complementary databases that we offered you just on top of the subscription. And just because we had this merger with ProQuest, and we really want to explore the possibility of that data sets joining. Now, data citation is actually quite a different database. To the best of my knowledge, you either have it on trial or like already have a paid access to it. Again, I'm not a commercial person, so my colleague Duan could probably explain a bit more context there. Important is that this database has been here for quite a while already, so it's not something that we just created last year, for example. Data citation index is probably more than 10 years old. And what exactly that is? So let's jump back to our diagram with how do different databases on Web of Science platform relate. So in the same angle right here with beyond published literature, we have this data citation index, and it's all about the data repositories. So just as we've just been talking about a lot of genomics, for example, and computational biology data, in a lot of ways, it relates, data citation index relates to these papers, but this is exactly where it sits. So it's to access data sets to validate study findings and reuse your own work. But let's talk about what exactly it is about. 12 approximately years ago, we just started approaching different open access repositories to get their data sets. And to those of you who might want an explanation of that, data sets are not exactly research outputs, so they're not the results of specific research, but those are the sets of data that are used a lot in the research. So, and that can be anything started from real data sets produced by a researcher, ending with, I don't know, Spitzer Space telescope, for example, flying out there in space, taking photos, and then putting them also for public access into a specific repository. So the data, a lot of a variety of data formats that can be used for further research. So human genome is also there. There can be certain software there. There can be certain observations, statistics, etc. So, and here are just a few types of the data that are used in data citation index. So a lot of them are data sets, but there's also like crystal structure, crystallographic structure. It can be image, it can be RNA, it can be software, it can be even a folk tale or some genomic data. So there's really a lot of them. And also as we discussed, starting from the conference proceeding citation index today, excuse me, it doesn't relate to all of the subject areas. So if you're not really dealing a lot with data science or with genomics, with image analysis, chances are you're not really going to benefit from using it. So it's not like it's going to fit every user. But yeah, if you are dealing with problems in genetics, in biochemistry, crystallography, geosciences, microbiology, etc., it's probably going to be something that you can run a search there, and you're probably going to find a data set that would fit you. Now, all of these are the subject areas that contain more than 100,000 records on data citation index. There are, of course, others, but they just have less than 100,000. So I decided that they might not be as exciting for you as the first ones. And this is what a typical record on data citation index looks like. So we have, of course, the name of the project. We have the authors. We have the source where it exists, and also it has a DOI, just because DOI, the data set, also just like a preprint or a journal article, it might have its own object identifier. It also has an abstract. Its keywords, and so this is how we actually, I believe, named the University of Science Malaysia in this data set. So if that's not exactly how you like yourself to be seen on data citation index, that's probably something that we can change, because that's basically, as I understand, that's the English translation of the term University of Science Malaysia. But yeah, that's also possible. And on top of here, we also see the citations. So as I mentioned already, data sets that are used heavily in the further research. So they rarely cite other works because they're not in itself research projects, but they can be cited a lot by Web of Science documents. And we see that this particular document authored by researchers, excuse me, this particular data set authored by someone from University of Science Malaysia has been cited by at least 2 documents on Web of Science. And when we go to Web of Science records, first of all, I can tell you that at least 1,800 documents on Web of Science core collection affiliated with the University of Science Malaysia, they do have some data sets associated with them. And when you run these searches on Web of Science, so first of all, on the left-hand panel, refine results, you will see this tick box associated data. So that's exactly how I found all the records, Web of Science articles affiliated with the University of Science Malaysia that do have associated data with them. And then on the level of the document itself, you can see this small database icon. That means that there is, so this particular Web of Science article does have linked metadata to it. And with access to the data citation index, you can basically take a look at what it is. Now, what are the use cases for the data citation index? Number one, I would say if you work in a subject area that's close to this data science, genomics, etc., that would clearly give you the idea, the opportunity to quickly find the data sets that are relevant to your studies. So you can easily find them, and not just all the data sets that are out there, but also rank them by citations, meaning that you can see the most important data sets that have already been cited a lot by your fellow researchers. And of course, there are also always links to these data sets, because the data sets themselves are normally in the public access, in the open access, so you can easily search for them and navigate to the full record, if I may, of this data set. Yeah, we still have time for live demonstration, although judging on the experience that we had with the research assistant, it might not be as exciting for you as and we for some reason don't have it here, so we probably should have it. Alternatively, what we can do is we can switch to questions, if you have any, about predatory publishers, about retractions, or about the data citation index. And then we'll just close it with a small quiz number 3, and consider it as finished. So are there any questions about the, yeah, please. And we probably might need a microphone for that. Yeah, but there are people on the WebEx, so that's why we might actually need a microphone for the people on the WebEx to hear the questions. Or alternatively, I can just repeat them in the microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Aisha Habib. I'm from School of Social Sciences, postgraduate student. I'm always curious whenever it comes to citation that should I go back and check if I'm citing from the predatory journals. So it is my concern that can it maximize or minimize the chances of publication by citing the retracted articles or the retracted articles or the articles from the predatory journals? Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, that's very, very good unification of the both topics in one good question. So let's start with, is there a concern by being cited by a predatory record or predatory publisher? So the way citation works is, the short answer is you shouldn't be concerned about that, because the way citation works is, let's assume this 2010 record in the Journal of Biophysics is yours. Let's assume that. It probably had a number of cited references there, and they could lead to the previously published record. Some of them might exist on Web of Science, some of them might not. And you'll be able to easily navigate across them. So like you go to the cited data set and take a look at least at the titles of the cited documents. In case they exist on Web of Science, you will also be able to see like the full records. However, what happens with the citing articles is those citations will be counted only if the citing article exists on Web of Science. So in case it's in a predatory publisher, again, 99.9% probability that it even won't be there. So you shouldn't be really concerned about some predatory open access publisher.
High index journals do consider the high index journals, right?
Can you say it again, please?
High index journal publications, their process do consider the high index citations.
Basically, yeah, the best.
Other than the quality of the paper.
So,
Other than the quality of the paper per se.
well, the citations are done at the level of the individual papers. So if we think about it, so.
Other than the quality of the paper per se, the citation from the high index journals also matters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There are even some indicators that take into consideration that basically, Russian Journal of Theoretical Physics is one level of journals, but Nature is completely different. So that the citations from Nature might be worth more. That's called an eigenfactor. So that's a separate metric we didn't talk about today. But again, when we're just talking about the times cited counts at Web of Science platform, you even won't notice citations from predatory publishers just because there's almost none of them on Web of Science, or I'm almost inclined to say there are none of them, but there probably won't be true.
I'm also very grateful to you for not putting my country's name there in the list of predatory journals, Pakistan.
Sorry?
I'm also very grateful to you for not putting my country's name in the list of the predatory journals or retracted articles.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, the other question was about retractions. Sorry, I didn't answer that one. So, like, should you be concerned if a retracted paper cites you? Is that the question that you had?
Yeah, is it necessary that the retracted papers are from the predatory journals?
No, absolutely not. So again, whatever we saw on Web of Science, and there was a huge number of the records there. Let me just go back. I think it was here. No, it was here. So those are the titles with the largest number of retractions. Now I'm, again, 99.9% sure that none of these are actually predatory. All of them are legitimate. Some of them might be even like the subscription-based. And a subscription-based journal cannot be a predatory by default just because they get their subscription from the readership audience. So no, those are definitely not predatory. I'm assuming that we could have probably experienced something like that in the past. I mean, not just Clarivate, but I mean the scientific community in general. But if a predatory open access journal doesn't even have peer review, why should they care about retractions? Because retractions are all about your reputation. So probably those are two different data sets.
I have one more question if anyone has no objection. If in the beginning of the career, we somehow have a retracted paper, or it has been published in a journal that is not authentic, or we can say the high index or the clone journal, Can it still affect our reputation?
I'm sorry, I don't
If
think.
in the beginning of the career, we somehow get a paper published in any not authentic, or you
Okay.
can say the clone or hijack journal, can it still affect our reputation if and nobody else knows about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, sometimes early career researchers are the people that are targeted a lot by the predatory open access publishers. So is there a way to like erase this memory from your career? I'm afraid the answer is no, because yeah, the like your scientific track record, it might still, if people will Google like for your track record, they might still find it. So unfortunately, there's no way of like completely forget about it. But yeah, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes, specifically when we're young. So if you're for the last 5 years, you're producing highly cited, high quality results, I guess nobody will take into consideration that like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you had, the first job which I applied to, I was almost fired from it for not being adequately fitting that job role. Now being one of the key experts here for the bibliometrics, I don't care about that experience of mine. I think nobody cares. So I hope the same works in the. So
Thank you so much for very lucrative.
thank you. Yeah, please.
Okay, Samuel Ode from Nigeria. My question is this: should retraction process been initiated by publisher? Are there room for corrections? And in order to reclaim your literature, so are there room for corrections? And if there are, what are the procedures?
Yeah, thank you. So I would say retraction process should be initiated probably by the entity that uncovered the serious problem in the research. So normally this might even happen on the website of the publisher. So you have a document published there, and sometimes there's this comments section, and people might just start coming saying, hey, this is not possible, please take a look at this and this. And as a researcher yourself, if you feel that people start criticizing you'll be inclined to actually check if it's valid or not. Yes, I probably should just maybe try that experiment once again, and if it works, then I did everything correct. If not, maybe yeah, I should look at the architecture of this research. So yeah, but in which case it can be publisher that's initiating that. I guess if I would be a publisher, I would reach out to the researcher saying, hey, we're getting mixed reviews, comments on your research. So can you please give us some more context, because we might be in a like dangerous situation for both for our reputation. And if the researcher claims that no, my research was perfect, please get back off. That's, I think, where the publisher might, and if a publisher might start their own investigation. And this is where, if it confirms that the research was wrong, this is when they can, on their own behalf, to raise this retraction.
Okay, you don't have a role to play in that regard?
I would say that whoever wants to protect their reputation, I think, should initiate the process. Because if you can still read the retraction notice who initiated it. So it can be the researcher, and unfortunately, it's not maybe looked at enough at the moment, because we only see the like the stamp itself that there is retract. But yeah, so the process, I think, is still being set up. So there's no firm rules of how it should be done. I think just to try to be guided by your own goodwill. Like, do you want your reputation, if you feel that there was something wrong about your research, to be improved, or well, maybe nobody cares even if if people find there's something. So yeah, I can't give you like a universal answer for that. Sorry about that. But thanks for the question. Yes, please.
Hello, this is Ziad from Jordan. I am a master's student at the School of Management. First of all, I would like to thank you for your big efforts and to give us the chance to understand this subject about publishing and correction and retractation, all of things. I have some questions if you don't mind. Yes, the first question is maybe I came lately here, so I will not ask you about the correction and retractations because I came lately. So I want to ask you something different, but it is related to publishing. The first question is how to reduce the rejection of publishing my paper. And the second question is how can I know if the journal is accepted to my subject or not? And the third question, I'm sorry, my question is too much. But the third question is how to avoid rejections of my, or something like this, to avoid the rejection of publishing, something like this. And how can I know if the journal is accepted globally? And the rank of the journal.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, I heard three questions. Number one is about the rejection percentage by certain publishers and how this can be reduced specifically for your, of course, records, because each of us is interested that their documents are not rejected. Yeah, let me start with answering that one. So that really depends on the publishers themselves, and the more prestigious the journal is, the higher the chances are that they will reject your paper just because it's not like in accordance with the level of the journal. With all respect, they sometimes can even like reply with something like that. And unfortunately, this is true for a lot of really top quality journals. Like if I just did some research in bibliometrics, for example, in my area, and I'm thinking about where to send it, I probably won't select Nature for that, because for Nature, I would keep any of my research that would qualify for Nobel Prize, I think. So the step number two, which I would do, is I would just run a search on Web of Science on my topic and analyze the results by journals. So what I will see is almost exactly the same thing, but here we were looking for all the retracted articles. Imagine that instead we've run a search on the topic of your research or of my research. We can do exactly the same thing. We can break down these search results by the journal titles. And in this case, we will see that each of these journals are the ones that contain this keyword, which I'm currently researching, the most in their titles, abstracts, or keywords. And the number in the rectangle will show the number of the articles that these journals have published. So this is like the relevance score of this journal to my to my subject area. And the next thing I would do is I will check the impact factor of this journal. And I think we've already been discussing today that if you don't have any records published on Web of Science yet, start with like third quartile by their impact factor. If you already have that, try to jump into the second one and further on. So yeah, but I guess step number one is finding out like the long list of the journals that are in your subject area just by running a topical search, and then just individually check their impact factor and where exactly they are in which quartile, just to approximately understand their level. So if you, yeah, go ahead.
What's the important factor to choosing the journal, the best journal?
So number one, relevance to your field.
Yeah.
Yeah. And number two is their basically their impact factor, where exactly they're ranked.
There are many factors. So
two, I would say, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Was there a third question which I failed?
I asked you about the third question is that how can I know how can you know that the journal is accepted globally and the rank of
yeah.
journal?
That the journal is accepted globally. Well, I would say that that won't be true, that any of the journals that are indexed in Web of Science are accepted globally. Reason for that is that there are certain local topics which, due to climatic or economic or social reasons, they only exist within certain region. So I would...
Sorry, because sometimes before I asked some professors to get a scholarship and they told me you have to choose the best journals to get PhD scholarship, but I don't know how to choose the best journal to avoid any rejections of scholarship.
Got it. So I just got an answer to your previous question. So you can still run a search maybe on Web of Science on a specific journal. So if you try to analyze a journal, whether or not it's accepted globally, and just try to break down these results by country. That's also possible. So we just run a journal search, but we break down the results by country. And we see from which countries authors publish in this journal. Because if they publish from these countries, they also read from this country. If you see that this journal is only...
Sorry, it depends on the country, you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you see that this journal only, for example, only researchers from Brazil publish there, probably it's been read only in Brazil.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, we have one more hand here. Can you help? Yeah, sorry, I just think this, or you already have the mic. Do you mind if there's a guy who already has the microphone, so he will ask the question, and yeah, please.
Okay, thank you for your educative conversation. I have so many questions. Okay, number one, what brought about this issue of predatory journals? What brought about this issue? When did they begin to emanate? For example, the issue of, I think, sometimes if you go on the website, whatever, you may find some very rich journals, articles, being published by these so-called predatory journals. And sometimes before we are exposed to these library databases, we resort to all these sorts of predatory journals. And sometimes they are very rich. So don't you think that maybe it is because of the expensive nature of the publication process and the peer review process that made some of us resort to these predatory journals? As major stakeholders, what are you doing to prevent all these things? For example, a journal may cost like $1,000, $2,000 to be published. As a student or just an ordinary lecturer, how can you get such huge amount to publish? That is number one. Number two, why is the peer review process taking so long? As major stakeholders, why can't you draw the attention of these reviewers to maybe reduce this process of reviewing? Because I consider it like this is a kind of cycle, inner cycle, expanded cycle, and the outer layers. If you don't belong to that inner cycle, then maybe your paper is not going to be published. And next is in the process of this retraction. This is the first time I'm hearing about this retraction, and I believe most of us are like that. If there is a retraction in journal, then what is the fate of these so-called expert reviewers? And don't you think that knowledge is at stake with the process of this retraction? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So to start with the first one, when this all started with the, obviously I'm not free, just give me a second. My colleague's asking me. So yeah, when this all started, I would say that I saw the first, probably the first predatory open access journals appeared before I joined the scientific business of Thomson Reuters, so that's probably before 2009. But I'm pretty sure that as the open access itself started in the mid-90s approximately, that's when we see the first open access documents on Web of Science. I would assume that the first predatory open access journals were in the early 2000s, something like that. Now, regarding what we're doing at Clarivate to prevent this from happening, I think I explained this during the presentation, but let me just repeat that once again. Number one is we are filtering the journals when we're just, if any journal submits their application to be indexed on Web of Science, we check them for a lot of parameters, including for whether or not they have a peer review process, and if they do have it and that's confirmed, then we at least will push them forward to the next stage of the review for being included into Web of Science. Now, is there anything we can do about the time it takes for peer review to accomplish? Well, because we're not publishers, there's not a lot of control that we have there, but it's important to understand that peer review to a large degree, it depends on the way that, first of all, the journal manages their business processes, and number two, how available are the reviewers themselves. So sometimes it happens that you send your paper to a journal, and the publisher immediately submits it to a peer reviewer, and the peer reviewer said, okay, I'll probably be able to take a look at this in a month's time. And they keep pushing him or her to do this peer review much quicker, and he doesn't have a lot of motivation for that. One of the key problems of peer review is lack of motivation, because the only reason people do that is their depth for the science, to keep it clean from the lower quality papers. So that's basically, they don't get paid for it. They don't get any additional metrics for it. However, certain universities, they also understand that it's only the best researchers who get invited for peer review, and that they shouldn't be pressing them with other tasks when they should be also doing peer review. And that's why certain universities, they measure the quality of job of their researchers, not just by their papers and their citations, but for example, by amount of hours that this researcher has done peer review. So that's probably something that could be changed. But I guess if somebody starts counting your hours of work, that's also a bit of a control here. So it's hard to say that there's no one unique solution that was sorted, but at least that's the direction where we could go. And number three, your question was about the retractions. So doesn't that literally undermine all the process of peer reviews if the retractions still happen? Well, I think because we're humans and because we all still make mistakes, I don't know, Elon Musk still launches rockets that sometimes fall down and they don't fly up. And there can be humans there, for example. So unfortunately, we're still far from perfect. Maybe when AI wipes us completely away from the face of the planet, they will not make any mistakes. But at the moment, this is how we work. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. So thank you very much.
We have question from WebEx first.
Okay, yeah, but
from Mr. Talib Hussein.
Uh-huh.
His question is it possible to republish retracted paper after corrections or need to process again?
Oh, that's a very good question. I actually never thought about it this way. So let's assume you published the paper, found out that there's a flaw. I would say that this is the most logical output. So if you published the paper, there was a big flaw, you published, you requested retraction, it happened, and then you make the correct version of the same experiment and you publish it in the same journal and in another one. That's a very good question. I think that's the way to go, basically. So thanks for asking it, but never thought about it before. Let's also Google for some other experts on their views for that. Thanks for that. Thanks for the question. We have another person on the mic here. Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Jean Pires. I'm from Ivory Coast. This is a French country. I'm the first student from that country here. I would like to ask a question. What are the consequences of retraction of articles? And don't you think it hurts scientific's reputation?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much. It really hurts. and sometimes it can hurt in an improper way. So for example, if I found out that there was an error in my research and I immediately requested a retraction and it happened, and somebody will start telling me, hey, you got a retracted paper, you're a bad scientist, that's a bad thing. And on the other hand, we see a lot of people who just keep it down, who won't issue the retractions in case there were flaws in their researches. Maybe will even intentionally falsify the data and still get it published and still get away from it. So yeah, that's the problem of the Institute of Reputation. Just like with democracy, it has its flaws, but there's nothing that has been invented that's better than that. But yeah, it's an important question you're mentioning, so thank you very much.
Okay, hello.
Thank you.
My name is Samuel.
Yeah.
I would like to ask for your advice regarding people who have unknowingly published in a predatory journal. They published their best work there. You know, they didn't know anything about predatory journals before, but later they got to know what can be done.
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, yeah, like I said, I think we had a similarly flavored question here recently. I wouldn't say that a lot can be done to wipe that memory away. So again, I think this is just a step in a person's life that the person has to accept and move further. And like I said, we all make mistakes. We all can rebuild our reputation by doing what is right. So I would say that again, there's no way to just like in Men in Black, just do this flash and everybody forgets about this publication. But yeah, what is right is just keep the hard work, create reputable research results, publish them in non-predatory journals, use all this, how I mentioned this, publication hygiene methods that I suggested, and yes, sooner or later, this new reputation will just wipe off the previous one. So I hope this is the correct way.
Okay, so there was a time somebody and myself was discussing about, oh, is it possible to republish the work in a reputable journal, or is it possible to withdraw it? Is it?
That's how. Okay, got it.
Because it's a work of good quality.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, I don't have an answer here because on one hand, the principle is if you've published already a research, you're not allowed to publish it again. But if that's a predatory publisher and people know it's a predatory publisher, well, probably that there should be a way, but I just don't think that if you send this paper once again to Nature, to Science, to any reputable publisher, what they can do first is they can try to Google if this has been ever published anywhere, and if they find this just might even worse the situation. So I wish there was a simple answer to this, but again, I'm afraid that the best way is just to accept that this is lost and try to find some other ideas for the research. But I'm really regret that if this happened. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Yusuf Sharif, a postgraduate student. Mine, first of all, it was a highly intellectual presentation. Highly excited with it, and my concern is issues regard to though you are not the publishers, but issues related to charges fee, or publishing or publishing charges. Who is deciding the fee? Is it you or the publishers? And if you, then why it is so high. My concern,
Got it.
we normally want to publish, but the charges fee sometimes discourage us. And my second question is there any scheme or any way or possibility of having a discount or a waiver of a charging fee? Thank you.
Got it. So yeah, the first question, it's simple. We don't have any control about the article processing charges, so there's no way we can even influence that. We're just a database that's collecting the abstract metadata from these publishers, and that's all. There's no way we can even suggest them, hey, can you guys make it lower? Although, of course, we'd love to. Now, is there a way to get a discount from them? I don't think there is. So first of all, a large chunk of publishers, they actually have like tiered pricing model. So they come like from the theory that a researcher from the US should probably be paying more than a researcher in Malaysia, and a researcher in Malaysia should probably be paying more than a researcher in poorer countries. So that's their approach. However, that's mostly being used for the business to business model. And when we're talking about business to client, business to live human, to private individual, that might not actually work with them. So that's why I would totally recommend, if you want to get your document to be published in an open access journal, try to find a funding agency that would provide grants for the research, and maybe would specifically request that you publish your research in an open access journal. In that case, as we already discussed today, there will be a part of the grant will be reserved specifically for paying the article processing charges. And step number two, we would, if USM hasn't thought about this yet, this is once again what we would recommend, to think about the procedure internally in the university. If you come up to them and to say, hey, I got a confirmation from the Q2, Q1 journal that they've accepted my paper, they're just asking for $4,000 of the article processing charge. I don't have this money. Can you help me? That the university works out the procedure to really help you with that. Thank you very much for the question.
My name is Victor. I want to really appreciate you for your sharing, since I want to say it has been very informative, and I want to commend you for that. I want to believe that a couple of us, many of us, has been here from morning session to the evening session today, and you've actually passed a lot of information, very extensive. I want to believe that the information will be very much a little bit go deeper to us, if some of us that would like to go back on the information and try as much as possible to review. So mine is not really a question, mine is going to be like a request that your PowerPoint is going to be shareable. Are you sharing to us, and how do we get it across?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. If I may, to readdress it to the library employees, because we already shared the slide decks with you. Is there any way they can be shared with the visitors today? Can you maybe?
Yeah, actually, you all have registered for our sessions this morning and this evening. Then we will share through the emails. All right?
Hello?
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Bello Lawal Zoramawa, a postgraduate student. Actually, my concern is still about the predatory journals. You see, questions have been asked about the consequences. For example, you published your work, and thereafter you discover that it's in predatory journals, and there is no prohibition for withdrawal of your work because it has been published, and also there is no any possibility of republishing your work again. So in this case, what, as a researchers, what are the best thing for us to do in order to avoid falling into such journals?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that this very much resonates to the other question, like what to do if you've already mistakenly published your best research in a predatory journal, and it's not even a question of how to how to accept this loss and move further. But is there any way to still, because there was so much effort put into creating that research, and this really might be your best research so far, is there any way to republish it in a more reputable journal? Is that what the question is about? Okay, so like I explained to the other gentleman, I believe there's no way that this can be done, although I wholeheartedly wish that there would be a way for it, just to retrieve back this paper and get it published in a more reputable journal. But I'm just afraid that because it has already been published and this is still formally a journal, there is absolutely no way it can be submitted to a reputable one. So the only thing I can say, I'm really sorry if it really happened.
Sorry, what I'm saying, what shall we do? What can we do to avoid sending our publication in such journals?
Just to avoid, okay. If you just want to avoid it in future, all I would recommend you to do is, first of all, when you submit a document for publication, select a journal that's normally indexed on Web of Science. That's number one. Number two, if you do certain research in any area, there is probably a list of journals that you read by yourself. So because you base your research based on some other articles that have already been published. So if you already read these journals and you know they're good, why not trying to submit your paper there? So try to build, like, within your subject area, try to start building the list of the journals that you consider good, not just because they have high impact factors, but because you often find interesting articles there and you read them. So I can name a number in my subject area, and I would totally recommend you to come up with such list in your subject area. So that would probably almost 100% like hedge you from the risk of being published in a.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I have questions from the WebEx.
Yeah, please.
I just read it from Mr. Azrul. Why do some of the journal name in Web of Science contain country name and or a city name? For example, this is the questions from our librarians as well. For example, in Scopus, the title of this journal is under applied science, and then in bracket they put Switzerland. But then in WOS, the same title, it is also applied science, but in bracket Basel. But then in applied science, they just stated applied science. So the problems is regarding the city name and also the other parts of Scopus and WOS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think I have the answer to this question. So I would recommend, if it's important, let's take this offline and just check well, if there's a real name for this journal, because they probably have an official name on their website. And if there's any way that we are capturing their name incorrectly and it's the Scopus that captures it correctly, we'll definitely be able to change it. We'll just reach out to the publisher to check it. I guess the reason for that, if that's the case, is that if a publisher wants to change their name, they normally let us know that, or from now on, please index our name as this, not as that one. Maybe they just didn't send this request to us. But again, that's assuming that we are on and Elsevier are right. Maybe it's the other way around.
Okay. Last question from the WebEx, from Mr. Anas. I have a query regarding the Curious Journal, a medical journal, which is indexed in the Web of Science. Curious offers free open access publishing and is primarily concerned with language quality and paper formatting. Right. Given this unique publishing requirement, can we trust the quality of such journals? If so, how to effectively do the editing process?
I don't think I quite understood the question. So we do have a journal on Web of Science, that has certain issues with what exactly?
The issues they just stated that it is free open access publishing, and they stated that with language quality and paper formatting. And then they also put there, given this unique publishing requirement, is it a trust quality of such journals?
So again, the journal, when you submit a manuscript to them, if I understand correctly, they have certain requirements for the language, and that depends on which language that is. If it's English, that's fine. If they request it to be like in local, I don't know, in Malay, that doesn't seem to be to be logical. But yeah, if I would say that certain journals, they have, if I understood the question correctly, the certain journals, they have specific requirements on language because well, sometimes we just speak different non-academic English, and that might not be acceptable at certain journals. But yeah, that's normally handled by the editorial corrections team that may alter the language in a way that the forms are used correct, and and something's wrong with my mic. I'm so sorry. So I'm just afraid that there's not enough. If the person could just specify their question, please, that would be great.
This one, another questions appear in the WebEx from Zhao Qing. Respected speakers, do you have some skills or strategy to discover the journals to submit? And then everything has the optimized choice. I think so does the paper submission.
Yeah, I just didn't get it.
The student asked about do you have any skills or strategy that you would like to suggest in order to discover what journal that might suit with your manuscript?
Excuse me. Yeah, exactly. I think we've been touching this today, but just to repeat, open Web of Science or any other database, if you don't like Web of Science, run a topical search there and see which journals are listed on the top for this list. So you're going to find the journals that contain your topical keyword the most. That means that those are the most relevant ones for your research. So yeah, thanks again for the question. I think, yeah, we have one more hand here. And
Last
Mike.
question. First of all, thank you so much. It was a wonderful question answer session. All the questions from my fellows and the knowledge you gave or deliver us today, that really added to my existing knowledge. And since I got to know more, and now I'm more curious to know that in the digitalization era and in the metaverse era, we are talking about the cyber crime, cyber bullies. So when you talk about the hijacked or cloned journals, why no action has been taken, or is it being taken against them?
So do you mean if there's any actions have been taken? Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, Jeffrey Beal, that's exactly who I think coined the term, like hijacked journal. So he has a separate, again, he doesn't maintain this blog any longer, but he did have a section on his website that's specifically dedicated to the list of the hijacked journals with the legitimate journals list, and close to them, like what is the hijacked version. So you can say which one is legitimate one, which one is not. Unfortunately, he doesn't maintain this database any longer. So I don't know if there's anyone who keeps this initiative so far.
But journals can themselves complain against those journals who are being hijacking their records or they're copying their data.
Can surely complain, like even post a notice on their site that these or make a mailing to their researchers, for example, that this journal is acting like us, but it's not ours. Unfortunately, the hijacked one can do exactly the same thing.
Because we innocent students can fall prey to these clone journals easily.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry that these news about hijacked journals, it creates like more anxiety, if this is the word, rather than goodwill that it's all going to be fine. I wish there was a simple solution for that, but so far it doesn't exist.
Okay, I think it's time for quiz time now. We're running out of time.
Oh yeah, thank you. So this time I did it simpler just to make sure I don't fail this time, and I just wrote all the questions in the mobile phone. So the way we're doing it right now is, where's my manager, by the way? Do we have Duan here? Is he even required for that? Because I'm afraid we need the giveaways once again for the quiz, right?
So anyone who answer will come to forward to take picture with you.
Ah, okay, yeah, that also works. But yeah, we still have the giveaways, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if anyone can help with giveaways, that would be perfect. Okay, so the first question is, what is the type of a predatory journal that steals the identity of a legitimate one? I'm sorry, that gentleman was first. Yeah. Yeah, correct. So can you please come to the stage? And again, I'm sorry if somebody raised their hands not 0.0001 second earlier and they didn't notice
Abel,
that. Yeah.
take picture.
Yeah.
with them.
Ah, there. Okay. Okay. All right, that brings us to question number 2, which was, I'm already forgetting things. So what's the name of the author of the first predatory journals list? Come on, yeah. Jeffrey Bill, yeah, that's right. Please come to the stage. Now the question number 3. Which workflow do the legitimate open access journals always have and predatory journals might refrain from? Yeah, correct. Double-blind peer review. That's very precise. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that this one should. Let me stand here. Okay, let me. Yep, congratulations. And the next one is. Oh no, does anybody remember my code from the intro? Oh, okay, so what party can initiate a retraction? Name at least 2. Please. Yeah, that's correct. That was author and publisher. Sometimes it can be the organization, but yeah, I asked just for at least 2. Congratulations. And the final one. Yeah, in this section, we only have 6. What is the most popular document type on data citation index? I know this is a hard one. Yeah, let's try. Exactly, data set, correct. Congratulations. Wow, that was a hard one. I appreciate it. All right, that concludes our quiz, and I'm afraid that concludes our session for today, right?
Yeah. So congratulations to all our winner and our sincerest appreciation to Mr. Pavel for demonstrating his proficiency in Web of Science and responding with insightful explanation to the audience inquiries. So we hope you found today's training enriching and valuable. And before we end, I would like to remind students, if you have any more questions regarding publishing, please go to our workshop which you can find at our lib.usm.my. Go to workshop here and click on it. Just find any class that you are interested. So this is all our basic classes. You need to register first. Just click on the class. For example, okay, that one, publishing strategy. And okay, then just click on register here. So make sure you go to all these classes before you go find any consultation. Okay, I think that's it. On behalf of our organizing team, we express our highest gratitude for your contribution to making our training today a success. Before departing, we kindly ask you to share your thoughts and questions by scanning the QR code on the screen. The left is feedback, and also please scan the QR code for my CPD and my CSD. So don't forget to pick up your packed meals before departing, as we have provided for all the participants. First come, first serve basis. And I think the last one is we should take a group photo together with the speaker.
Yeah, and on behalf of Clarivate, personally, thank you so much for arranging this event, and thank you to all of you for your time and for your excitement. Thanks a lot, guys.